Just a quick overview of the box contents. We have the instructions. We have the all-important cutout template. We have some screws and some connectors for the included new humidistat. And then we actually have the unit itself, which is the mister. Now the mister itself is a very simple device. It's a solenoid, which basically allows your water pressure to be burst out into a very, very fine mist. Now from this side is of course the outside, and then there's a sealing gasket that we'll be applying, and then right here is the actual mister itself. Extremely fine. I've had these out doing them repair, cleaning when someone doesn't clean it, and subsequent to that there is a very, very fine mist. It's going to be picked up into the hot air intake. Also all important, this is what I picked up for a scale eliminator. You need this. You gotta have this. Change it every year. Well, welcome to my basement. Here's my dear friend, the carrier furnace. It is in full roar. Sorry about that. We'll maybe touch up the audio. Anybody in Michigan or anywhere in the northern states has a pretty good idea what the heck this is. Well, the air's dry, I've got allergies, and this thing is not getting it done. Installed with the new furnace, everything was wonderful, worked okay, but the science is bad. I'll explain more about that, but you get to go in and change these filters out ever so often. Look at this mess. Yeah, I know it's a rite of passage in Michigan. However, it's blowing into the cold air side. I'm not really sure how that's going to help anybody. So we're going to take a shot at changing that. So this, let's go down there. Alright. So we're going to change our fortune today. So stay tuned. Well, now as the furnaces went down to a subtle afterburn blow, this is the ducting coming out of the hot air side that comes around. Yeah, I've got it shunted off right now, and it feeds into the humidifier box. So this ducting is the cold air return, which goes down and is drawn through the furnace, and then it goes back up and out into the ducting in the house. Now, why would you blow the moisture into there? That's a good question. Down here, this is the cold air return. This box right here is my mechanical filter. So the air is flowing down with the moisture included and through my filter, then to get circulated back up the furnace. Maybe there's a reason for that, but it defies my logic. So we talked about briefly unboxing it. This is the mini mister right here. There's one key attribute you need to know is not only is it going to be powered by the furnace via the 24-volt output, it has a heat element at the bottom that has to engage. So as a safety to keep this thing from running all summer long, basically this has to activate a little micro switch there inside, thermal micro switch. It actually physically moves. It has to be engaged. So in order to put that in and to do something smart, you need an area on your furnace that is reliably hot. Now as the air flows through my furnace, this side is actually fairly cool. If you come around to the back, I apologize for the lighting back here, this area is the greatest amount of heat. I've installed a couple of these so far, and I think I'm going to go on the back side of this, just so I'll make sure I have plenty of heat, and it really doesn't need to be seen, it just needs to be heard occasionally to make sure it's working. So that's how I'm going to roll. Okay, we've improved our lighting situation back here in the back just a little bit. So now we're going to pick a selection. Now, as I mentioned before, this spot right here is getting nice and warm, and that's where the hot air duct was going through before. Pretty sure that's a really nice flowing spot. Here is my air conditioning unit, also known as an A coil. So inside of this there is a coil which makes a big A. You want to stay away from that unless you want to change it out next year when you figure out you don't have air conditioning. So from this we're going to do an install right here, and the good folks at Trion, the manufacturer, provided us a handy dandy little template. So on this template it provides us a space, but it's not for the faint of heart, because we're going to mount this, we're going to punch a couple of holes, and if you'll see that big squared section in the middle, we're going to have to cut a hole out of that. So that's how we're going to go. Let's get set up. Okay, just a little simple Scotch tape, and in the unit right here, make sure that you're going to have adequate clearance. I'm probably going to take this hot air pipe off, but not today. It's cold. I got other things to do. So we're going to mount this, and we've got clearance, and this thing is built to handle the heat, so it's not going to be a big problem for that. So let's continue going. But as you can see, just kind of square it off. Got it in the center, got it well clear of this. You don't want to go too high, because as you start losing that heat, this thermal element here, it may not be happy. You may have to wind up having to move it. You don't want that. Oh yeah, one other tip. Having created a personal adventure of God's Perfect Idiot, I've actually dropped a plate like this down into the A coil, and I had to go fishing. So in order to do this, I basically just take a quick sheet metal screw right in the middle that's getting cut out anyway, and I just put myself a quick little piece of tie wire, whatever you got. Just in the event that this thing goes sideways, you'll be able to retrieve that. Alright, each of the four corners have been center punched, and almost accurately. Nice grouping on some of them, but yeesh. Alright, so we're going to get this thing out of here. Okay, to protect the camera, we're going to keep it kind of off to the side here. The weapon of choice is Ultimate Danger, a supporter cable 4.5 inch grinder with a very thin cutoff wheel, and no safety guard, ladies. We're working without a net here today. So keep your hands clear of it. It will be fine. I'm going to be wearing a full face shield, so we're going to knock this out really quick. It's just sheet metal. We're not going crazy and doing anything really exotic. Not too shabby. And bring in. Not too bad. I've got just little bitty corner joints I need to break loose, but other than that, the line staying on there kind of helps you keep track of where you're at. It's very easy with this unapproved tool to go a little nuts. And just lean it right out of there. So, behind there, I have a little insulation I need to deal with. Another tip, before you peel this off, those center punches you made, you may want to chase those with a little bitty drill. The screws are self-starting, and that's fine. But, yeah. You may lose your mark or miss the mark or whatever. So, I'm just going to chase that. Just like this. Use the drill bit to give myself a little bit more clear spotting. Oy vey, you know it's going to do it. So we came back in, and kind of the fundamental reason why I did that, if you can see those marks now, it's very clear. Yeah, good center punching would have worked great, but and we're off to the races. Just got one screw to remove here. Get access inside. Alright. Going to get to the working side of this. Trying to stay out of your camera angle. It has two little latches at the bottom. So you just pull at the top and it will come up just a little bit of fight. And the entire unit comes out. Alright, inside you have your water mister and the solenoid, two wires. These are going to be fired off the 24 volts on the Humidistat, and that's it. That's all that's going on in here. These can be cleaned. I would recommend probably annually. Use it in conjunction with that scale, the eliminator I showed you earlier, and you'll probably have many, many years. These valves are very pricey, but they are replaceable if you find that you don't have the right output. Trion sells multiple variants of this, and I'm sure they're probably industry standard for something else. Alright, so that leaves us with the inside of the box. You'll notice in the back, it's pretty much Dan proof here. It's going to show you the airflow goes up. So you've got 4 screws that are going to go into these corners for the holes we've already made, and they put in tremendously huge screws for this very light duty application. So here's where we are, and we're going to get this mounted. Well, we have a Dobbs family first. All the holes lined up. So I'm going to go ahead and get this mounted. I cheated. I went ahead and pre-chased the holes before I put this up here to make this installation super easy and super quick. Just one more note on this thermal unit here at the bottom. It is heat activated. I forget what the cut in is, 140, 105, 150 degrees Fahrenheit. But inside this little disc, if you're ever playing with one of these, that disc will pop when it hits the proper temperature, and you will hear an audible click. That's just one of the things. I was helping a friend of mine double check his the other day, and it was working fine. We had plenty of heat, but that was the first thing we checked, because there isn't any circuitry here to deal with. The solenoid, and that's it. Okay, so we're going to install it. Inside there's a bit of, I would probably assume it's a high temp silicone based on the application, but this has actually got to push against it and seal up. So start off, there are 2 additional wires that you need to pull out that are going to go to the Humidistat, but that's it. They left a hole here for that application, and when this is sealed up, there's really not going to be any hot air flowing out of this, so choose what you want to do. That looks like 3/4 inch hole. If you want to put a wire retainer on there, that's fine, but I don't think it's going to be any big need. That's another reason I put it here behind the furnace. There's no activity back here at all. Alright, so I'm going to slide it in, get into the notches again, and then I'm going to slowly apply pressure, pops right back into position, reinstall the single Phillips. Reef down on it, it's going into plastic, so don't go crazy. Finger tight will be more than ample. Alright, that's on. I can turn the furnace back on before I get any feedback from upstairs. Okay, now we're moving around to the front. We've got the mister mounted, ready to go. It's waiting to be wired and plumbed. There'll be a cold water feed we'll be giving it here shortly. We're going to have to go obviously to the hardware store and pick up some more copper tubing. Plastic's wonderful. I'm sure it's great. I prefer copper because I prefer copper. It's more of a one and done, forever and ever. Amen. Alright, so this is your old carrier Humidistat. We're going to dismount this poor old girl. It has worked flawlessly. If you listen closely, You can't hear that probably, but there's a slight tick in there. That's all it does. 24 volts from the furnace up to this, and then 24 volts over was to the old water valve way back. Okay. Ugh. Any bets on how nasty my ductwork is? Ugh. So, bring this bad boy over. And the red and white was going to the old humidistat, or going to the old actuator. So that means this guy this guy is coming from my furnace. Alright. Guy out. Single strand wires. I hate them. They're just so doggone aggressive. We're going to add these, which they have nice insulated connectors. You're going to use a couple of wire nuts. This is not a big code problem for us. We're going to add those, and then we're going to mount this baby up. Alright. Well, we're back after a brief break here. Apologize for going manual here, but you can see that we cleaned up the mess that was there before, and we've got the new Humidistat mounted, and everything seems to be just fine. Now, the last couple of elements we have to do is plumb in the cold water feed, plumb in the filter, and get the wiring in for the Humidistat. And then we're in good shape. We'll be testing it. Hang in there. One tip. This is a laughingly called vampire adapter. If you can get away without using one of those, do so. They're nothing but a pain in the neck, doomed to failure. They're quick, they're easy, and there's a reason that there's always a payback and a karma for using one. Now, this is what I did last year, or maybe a year and a half ago. So I went ahead and teed in, and I brought in a real honest-to-goodness water valve and adapted it down into the 1/4 inch. I don't expect that to ever fail in what years I've got left. So if you can do that, I'd recommend it. Yeah, there's a little bit of hijinks down here at the end. You're running down from the 1/2 inch down into the 1/4, but that will be one and done. Cost you a few bucks in brass, but you're over with. This thing, that's going to fail you very, very soon. Probably a year, 2 years, and then it's going to start to leak and or just plug. They're renowned for plugging, so I hate them. Alright, and we're back. We're going to start off closing off the manual valve. Everything's going great. We're just going to loosen this. And yeah, you're going to have just a couple drips of water. Don't panic. It's going to be fine. You need not consult government authorities at this juncture. And we're going to go over and adjust the other. Be right back. Alright. So we have removed our copper feed pipe that was there before, going down to the old humidifier, and we have in addition our 24-volt feed from our the old wiring from the new Humidistat, and it's going to be coming across right across the back here to this puppy. So fairly straightforward. We're going to knock this out in quick succession, but I wanted to show you from the angle. Well, furnace is in full roar, but I wanted to come into the screen just for a bit. I just went and picked this up from Lowe's, the Kings of Disappointment. Anyway, I picked it up It's a 1/4 inch copper tube, as common as you can be. From that, I pulled it right out of the box, and here's what I get. Anybody see anything strange? Yeah, exactly. Straight out of the box, a good 5 inches of it is kinked. And as anyone who's worked with copper pipe knows, once it's kinked, it's game over. So that piece of the pipe has to be thrown away right out of the box. Okay, so if anybody hasn't ever messed with compression fittings, I know everybody does, it's just no reason to talk about it anymore, but it's a 1/4 inch compression fitting, and this one has a captive ferrule inside of it. The ferrule is actually the part that grabs the copper and actually forms the seal. So from that, basically it just slides over the pipe itself, and when you tighten it, that ferrule will bite down and cause it to seal. Alright? Very simple, straightforward, it's been that way for a billion years. But if it's your first time, you've never seen it done, etc., we're going to basically kind of go through it. But first, we have to deal with the person who didn't care about their job. Small, little rigid, little mini pipe cutter. We're going to come in here and just take this right off. Still more aggravating than it is. It's not going to break me from the fact that this is wasted, but people do have certain things in packaging that they're supposed to keep an eye on, and I think this would fail pretty much any industry test as far as packaging. Come down. Yeah, just as an extra, you don't have to do this. The copper is going to be just fine, but I'm tying it off. Might it rattle? Sure. Those clips are 1/4 inch. They're electrical, but for what I'm using it here for, they're not a dissimilar metal. They won't corrode or anything crazy like that. Just to hold it in position to make it a little bit neater. Okay, we're secured along the one side there. I'm going to do something a little crazy here. I'm going to go ahead and leave plenty of a radius over on this corner. This is where it almost got me. There's a spot right here where it started to kink, and with copper, once it kinks, it's over. So I'm going to hold that true and come over here, and then we're going to figure out how we're going to deal with that filter. I've got extra pipe, but it's not a problem, but I just want to secure this off. I might even go secure it up and give me some clearance to get that filter in. We'll tidy this up just a smidge, but I wanted to clear that up. Copper is very flexible, very easy to work with, but unforgiving if you kink it. Alright, be right back. Well, actually, we're going to stay rolling. Why not? This clips right here. And get myself enough secure. You don't want that tight on the corner. You want it right in the position. And we're going to bring this up. Because, well, it happens to all of us. It just happened to me. Alright, that's why you buy a great big box with extras. Okay. Load it right in. Doesn't have to be super tight. Don't go nuts. Okay. Slight change of plan. I was looking at the filter, and as I was leaning against it, the furnace was running, and it was like, I probably don't want this big piece of plastic infused with smaller plastic webbing anywhere near any heat. And as I'm bumbling along, I kind of noticed and said, you know, I've got an offset right here, whereas I was transitioning from this point and making this bend and transitioning over to here, I have a natural rise. Guess what? The filter fits right through there. So
I'm going to change plans here, and I'm actually going to put the filter right over here. It'll be easily serviced, and at the same time it'll actually be far enough away from the heat. This also does have a directional on it. Let me see if I can get that on there for you. There's the arrow. It's not well documented on the front. Usually they would blast it all over the front, but in this case they're putting it right there. I'm going to put the first one right about here. Now it's important when you're working on these compression fittings that you don't booger the spot that you want to put the compression fitting on, because if you do, then it won't set flush, and then you'll have trouble sealing and a few other odds and ends like that. So just making a slight cut here, and I'm going to go ahead and snug it up. Oh, crescent wrenches, Dan. Yeah. It's plumbing, okay? Will be okay. What's this in the center? That's sloppy. Yeah, that'll be my extra when I probably will need it at some point. Okay. If I have any guts at all, we're going to turn the water on. You watch and I'll come right back. Hey, how we doing? One little drop over here. One little drop over there. Do not panic. This is how you know how tight. Back up. Arrow. There we go. Looks like that one's done. That one's dry. Alright. I think we're ready to do the electrical now. Well, the conclusion of our water test was the water, basically the ferrule that I put in there, it was integrated in the nut from Lowe's, over at the supply line, it leaked. So as I stated before, once you do that, there's only one way out. I had to cut it off. Fortunately, I stopped by my local family farm and home, thanks folks, and they had exactly one set of ferrules on the shelf and no nuts. So I actually wound up buying an extra union, and I just peeled off one side of that union and I just used it to fix it. So, meanwhile, back to the race with the electrical. Well guys, it's been a long and interesting day today, but this thing, it's working. So I'm going to give you a sound on it. I'll be right back. Listen for a thunk. Okay, that thunking sound, that's what I like to call a happy noise, because it's working. So I want to take you handheld here for just a second. Sorry about the lighting. We brought it in, we tied off the water line, we came across, we tied in the electrical. That's from the existing electrical from before, and we've got it wired in. So the clunking you were hearing was me around the other side adjusting the Humidistat. So the Humidistat was basically engaging 24 volts into this. These yellow wires, obviously polarity did not matter. The only other thing I had to do when I got it set up is when the water valve came on, I needed to bleed this. That's a little bit of water you're seeing here. That's not an actual leak. That's where I was bleeding it, because the solenoid couldn't bleed the air out fast enough, so basically it wasn't flowing anything. But if you put your hand against this right now or lay your ear against it, you can hear that slight little hissing. So, one small update. The ugly wall wart that was the old humidifier, it's gone. Actually, my fresh air return wasn't too awful inside. I was impressed. Next up, we're going to clean this mess up. We're going to block this off. this piece of sheet metal over in the floor to take care of that problem. And then we'll be changing the filter. Then I'm going upstairs.